Welcome to the Working CEO podcast, where we share real advice for busy business leaders. No business school BS, no sugarcoating, just straight talk about how to get work done. Today's guest is about as no BS as you can get, according to those in the know. Curt Allen is a tech veteran who has been there, done that, with roles ranging from president and owner of a distributor to channel chief for major carriers. He's taken that hard-won experience and offers it up as a service in his role as founding partner at EagleTEQ Advisors. We'll chat with Curt about his new gig, raising capital, M&A, and hanging out on his boat with his dog, Cooper. That's up next on the Working CEO podcast. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone. I'm your co-host, Susanna Song, Vice President of Marketing at Highwire Networks. And I am here with the Working CEO, Mark Porter, CEO of Highwire Networks. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Susanna. How are you?
Good. And I know you've been busy, hence the longer than expected gap between our last two episodes. But hey, at least we're recording today.
I'm glad to be doing this, actually.
Yeah, and we're making it up with a big personality today. We have Curt with us today, and I teased the dog Cooper on a boat, and let's break the ice right away. So tell us about your dog Cooper and
forget everything else. Let's talk about the boat.
Yeah, he's
the boat.
Yeah, Cooper's my boy. He's my boy, but he was a rescue from pit bull rescue here in Atlanta called Friends to the Forlorn. He was like the true street dog. He had been, he was emaciated. He was a 9-month-old puppy. They threw him into a kennel with 9 adult males. He got mauled, had his ear ripped off, and nearly lost his leg. So he was a medical foster. A family took him for about 9 months to nurse him back to health. With the intent of transitioning him to us when he was healthy. So that was 9 years ago now. So he's just past 10, and he's seen his better days. He's got some medical issues, but nothing makes him happier than Dawn in the bow of that little John boat that I take out. So we actually got on some fish yesterday. So Cooper, what I'd like to do is, as he's getting probably closer to the end, is we call it, we're going to do all the things. We're going to do all the things. We'll get on a lake, and he sleeps at my feet, and all that stuff. But he's been a great friend to me, and we have a lot of fun here.
Awesome. I just got to take mine on vacation with us. So we had a little unscheduled local vacation instead of what we had planned, and ours just went with us. And it took us 7.5 years to get her back on vacation with us and back in, ironically, the same river that she was in 7.5 years ago. It took her all of about 2 minutes to remember how to swim. So.
Yeah, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Cooper's sister, who turned 14 today, our little one-eyed Chihuahua Jack Russell Terrier mix. So my wife's a retired school teacher, and she basically volunteers full-time at a
Sounds like
rescue.
Kurt's home for wayward and wounded animals.
Exactly. Awesome. Give us your tired, you're poor.
I love it. Curt, why don't you give us in your own background, in your own words, a little bit of your own background and what you've done, and let the people kind of understand where you're coming from.
Sure. I'm like a lot of us, I got into telecom back in the heyday. Well, I guess a lot of us that are at least my age, but I started working at AT&T, my second job out of college in like 1992. And everyone says, how did you get into telecom? The honest ones of us say low barriers to entry. We got into telecom because they took us, and that was certainly my story. But had a couple of jobs, and one morphed into running a wholesale services team for Intercall, the old conferencing company that's now part of Intrado, and that was my first exposure to the channel. And I fell in love with the concept of, these entrepreneurial success stories that were, that guy who was a sales rep at MCI that decided to risk it all and, miss a few mortgage payments and go out, hang a shingle and try to start a business. And I mean, even the larger companies, the interconnects and the data bars in later years, that every single one of those partners, there was a really cool story, and there was an entrepreneur who could tell you his, the 3 times he was dirt broke, and the ascension and the success, and just all the kind of the excitement of, taking control of your life by doing something as insane as becoming an entrepreneur. So I was hooked. And in 2004, with 3 partners, we started a company called X4 Solutions, a master agency out of Chicago. Ran that for 13 years. Had a successful exit, sold it to Sandler Partners. I will note we sold it to Sandler 10 weeks before Intelisys did their deal. They kind of knocked me off the front page because theirs was about 10 times the size of ours. But yeah, since then I kind of, in a sense, felt like I wanted to be of service to the community that I'd made my bones with. So I took a couple of challenging jobs. I was the channel chief and president of strategic partnerships at Windstream, and was there for 3 years through the bankruptcy and a lot of those kind of really rough times. But again, sometimes it may not be the most sexy thing in the world, but mitigating harm and trying to make sure as few people are hurt as possible, it can be honorable as well. So, I think we did that to the extent we could. And then I've taken a succession of consulting gigs from there. I had a formal 6-month channel chief job at Vonage, which was basically prepping Jim Regan to take that over, doing a little revamp. And they just got to their exit. So they just announced the sale to Ericsson. Then I stood up, decided to make the consulting a little more formal, and that's where EagleTEQ came to be, is myself and 4 partners originally. Ken Bisnoff has since left the advisory and is the channel chief at GTT, but we brought Jen Spindle in. So there's still 5 of us out there. Just basically, like I've signed a sign on my desk that says, do things that interest you with people you like. And so the consulting arm has allowed me to do that. I work on things that interest me. The M&A world has been super exciting. That was an area of kind of private equity that I didn't have a lot of experience in. So do a couple of managing partner roles and some commercial due diligence for PE firms. Did that for about 1.5 years. I do a lot of really tactical consulting with carriers, with distributors, with investors in the business. Kind of what I say to people is, if you want a 115 slide deck to deliver to your board, there's a bunch of consulting firms that can do that. If you want someone to get hip to hip with your VP of sales and work on go-to-market, how to drive business, building tactical plans towards strategic goals, that's where I fit. So do a lot of work there, and that kind of segued into my part-time gig, where a strategic advisor at Blue Wave Technology Group. So working with the senior leadership team there, and then helping out on M&A and integration, and I call it's like being a grandparent. I get to do just enough operator stuff, but I get to hand the kids back at the end of the day and let other people go execute.
So when you talk about your days working with all those entrepreneurs, and you're right about it, the guys that were broke 3 times and somehow made it. I talk to entrepreneur after entrepreneur after entrepreneur, and everybody kind of faces that moment where you either give up or hawk your house and your wife's jewelry and risk it all and go on, or what, and I've heard all of those things, by the way, right? And living with your house hanging over your head is I don't think something you ever really fully get used to, but it does. I think every entrepreneur that starts up has been in that boat if they've ever taken a penny of debt. When you look at those days and you talk to those men and women and hear their stories, what are some of the 1 or 2 good things or 1 or 2 really awful things that you saw or heard over and over that somebody who's thinking about this really needs to understand or not do or do?
Yeah, I think, I'll give the kind of bad, and then I'll give the good. I think the bad can be, we're by definition dreamers. We think about, hey, we can apply some capital and we're going to be the next whatever, the next big thing. And it's never that linear. It's never that easy. So I think, like, if you can be a dreamer, with a really good calculator, like that if you can be honest with yourself about the resources it's going to take, if you can be really honest with yourself about whether the market will even bear what you're trying to bring to market. I can't tell you how many times people come to me with great business ideas, and then I destroy them with a calculator. I say, there's no way. It
doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're either making the proverbial banana slicer, or you're making something that's so over-engineered that you'll never be able to get from the market what you need for that solution. So my warning to aspiring entrepreneurs is to be really honest with yourself. being checkbook honest is easy, but looking in the mirror and being really honest with yourself, saying, is this viable? Is this the smart thing to do? So that's on the challenging side. But I'll tell you what I've learned, especially in the last 20 years, is entrepreneurs, especially successful ones, they tend to be some of the most compassionate, generous people you'll ever meet. And I think it's because of that dead broke story. I think it's because of the challenges that they went through, that there's an appreciation among us who've made it to the other side and built something successful. And there's certainly, I take a lot of pride in the businesses that I've kind of, brought over to the other side into profitability. But especially with some of the geopolitical stuff that goes on in the world, where the whole 1%ers and all this stuff, and you'll have some guy or lady who's built a super successful business, and people from the outside will think like, it was handed to them, or they somehow didn't earn it, they didn't deserve it. And so what I would suggest people do is, instead of just talking about their business and just talking about the beach house and that kind of stuff, is get into the real story of, why did that person start that business? What were the struggles and challenges? And then what's it meant to get on the other side? And I think what you'll end up finding is we all had our struggles. We all had that broke period. We all thought on several occasions, we got to be out of our damn minds. And then the ones that made it on the other side, we circle back and go do it again. So I guess I'd equate it. I could never claim to identify with a woman having children, but I guess that's a little bit like why would anyone have more than one child after going through that?
The last time I bought, I've sold the company a couple times, 3 times I think, and bought it back. And the last time I told my wife I was doing this, and she said, well, I guess it wasn't it was the last time I bought it back. I said, I carved out a great deal, honey. What's that? I said, well, I met with the bank, and I don't need to, I'm going to borrow $4 million, and they don't even want the house as collateral. She said, which house? I said, the one here in Illinois. She said, well, that's because it's underwater and the taxes are insane. I said, that is true. It has no value to them, so they don't want the house. She said, what about the house in Key West? I said, oh, no, they want that one. I said, they want that. And she said, we swore we'd never do this again. I said, I did. I promised, but we're doing it again. It's going to be...
I said it too. I said, honey, no matter what I do, I'm just going to kick around and consult a little bit. If anything pops up, it'll be other people's money. I'm not going back in. So of course I'm investing alongside 2 different PE firms on 3 different projects.
I was fortunate. I did get the do whatever you want, which this time, after many years of marriage and ups and downs in business, this time I realized that doesn't actually mean do whatever you want. And as fate would have it, I think it was 2 days later, I had a chance dinner where I was introduced to somebody. 7 to 10 minutes into the dinner, we were already really discussing how he and his business partner could be part of this deal. And ultimately, I guess there's probably a lesson in this. Ultimately, I gave up a significant portion of equity, but with that had no financial risk,
no exposure
back at the end of the day, and was still, substantially in the majority on all of that. But so it is a lesson, and like you said, the opportunity to me, also, by the way, the greatest obligation on earth was these folks ponied up $4 million. I had an obligation to get them their money back and then some. And actually, I think I probably worked harder to get them their return than I ever did with focused on, my own personal debt when I had my debt in the company. It's an interesting thing, which I also think is a characteristic of a lot of entrepreneurs. Like you talked about, I do think they're very compassionate, very passionate in general, very, very willing to help, often to their own detriment. I mean, I see a lot of folks who are very willing to help and hang on to folks because they don't want to send them packing. which is
and that's really kind of what I was getting at when I talked about generosity and compassion. It's not just kind of the spinning the checks, but I mean, I've never seen a group of people more dedicated to all their stakeholders, whether it's people that have ponied up to invest, whether it's partners, whether it's employees. I know we at X4, when we sold the business, my most proud stat, now granted, we only had 20 or so employees, but in the 8.5 years leading up to the sale, we didn't have a single person leave the business, either by choice or not by choice. We had people in the right seats. They were happy to be there, and nobody left. And people say, well, what's your most proud moment? And they want me to say the transaction. I want me to say this. I said, no, is that, we had these 22 people and their families that were better off for the risks that we took with our capital all those years earlier. And they still to this day, I talk to some of those people, and most of them are still with Alan Sandler, 6 years after that transaction, which I'm also proud of, that they were all left in a good position. But that's where it's always, should have been. And for me, I think, especially later in my career, it's about the personal connections, that the other stuff, the exits, the money, all those things. I know it's cliche to say it, but those are results. It's like the goals are doing the next right thing, being kind, being honest and integrous in all your dealings. And it's amazing if you kind of string enough of those things together, the results will happen. But that's
a really critical point, Curt. And I think people talk about exits and the financial success, and as I mentioned, I've sold the business, I bought it back. It's the business itself is an asset, no different than any real estate that I own or any other equities or whatever. The business itself is just an asset. The people and the purpose and those things are very different. And I've walked away from, in 2019, I walked away from a very significant payday because I didn't feel right about exiting the business, and I couldn't tell you exactly why. Ultimately, it came to me, and I think Susanna was there at the moment it hit me. In fact, because I was doing a social media interview for a marketing firm that interviewed kind of like this, is interviewed entrepreneurs, and they asked me a question, and in the process of answering the question and thinking about what that answer was, I came to realize I had this unfinished business and that it just wasn't going to be good for my team, for my people, for the ones who in particular had been with me for a long period of time. And there was it was good, but there was no opportunity to really share with them in a way that would change their lives. And they were probably going to be out of a job because I didn't feel like the new ownership, I really didn't feel like they were going to be able to carry forward what we had started. And we had just launched our cybersecurity business and all those other things. If there's not a greater purpose behind what you're doing than just the money or some big payday or some big exit, if it's not about your family security and your security into retirement and the people around you and changing lives, I got news for you. Go do something else because it's too damn.
Exactly. Amen.
That's that part. I think that's a message that I know. I'm certainly not. I shouldn't be complaining. I still probably do too much, but when it comes down to it, especially in the early days, especially when it's 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, it's hard. And unless you have the good fortune, I don't know what the percentage is, but anymore, but it's a small portion of businesses in this country, in this world, that make it past $1 million. And the ones that get to 5 million and 10 million, and each one of those thresholds, at least in my personal experience and the folks that I've mentored, each one of them brings a whole other level of craziness and complexity and risk. And any one of those, every time I feel like things are going too good, I get nervous. I don't know how it was for you, but if it was easy for a period, I get nervous and I get unsettled because I like to live paranoid.
Well, I think that goes back to the kind of entrepreneurial mindset. Like, I had to make major adjustments later in my career to run big businesses. because my mentality was that, 1, 2, 3, turn the pea into a golf ball, the golf ball into a grapefruit, the grapefruit into a watermelon kind of, that play. Well, that guy isn't, not only not usually, but very rarely is that guy that should be running the $50 million business up to 100 and vice versa. So unless we evolve as leaders, we're probably going to work ourselves out of jobs if we're smart enough to realize that when the business gets to a point where we're not the right, person for that. Now, I did some, big corporate gigs later in my career, but I had to completely change my mindset, kind of like corporate serenity, right? Accept the things you can't change, change the things you can. It just really, it's different when you have a small 10-person organization. Sometimes I shouldn't, but I can do pretty much whatever needs to be done in an organization that agile. When I'm running, 600 people as part of a $6 billion company reporting to, trustees and a board of directors, my agility is slightly different in that scenario.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I know that I personally faced and continue to face as as in terms of growth percentages. The growth we're going to, we're going to be. Well, I can't say because we're publicly traded, so I got to be careful. But in terms of percentage growth, it's enough to choke a horse. And people don't understand 15, 20% growth in a year is often a lot to manage or handle. When you're trying to do that month over month, quarter over quarter, and do those kind of percentages, managing through the change, managing through the sausage grinder that it is on people. And Susanna can attest in our meetings when we start looking and talking about growth and talking about that change, it's something that does take a different mindset because it is painful. It breaks people along the way, and you have to be careful because there's really nothing worse than having somebody snap because you made a mistake or you pushed too far too fast and it could have been avoided. And I'm certain that I've done that over the years. I'm certain that others on my management team have done that over the years. And it's because oftentimes you just don't have the time to think through those pieces. In service related businesses, they're all about the people. And I know for me, that's one of the things I look back on. I've had the opportunity at least twice now to reach back and bring somebody back in who maybe didn't make it through the first cycle, but was willing to give it a try with me later. And to me, I think that's it's redemption for me to get another chance to prove to them that, they can do something great here and work together. Because it's unfortunate when you make a mistake on the people side of business. I hate to see that. And there's been, with the last couple of years, there's been lots of opportunity for that across, around the world with all the craziness of COVID and the great resignation that turns out to be something totally different and all those pieces. So, Curt, when you look back, one thing we ask everybody on the show, and we get some fascinating answers. When you look back and you say, you're today, Curt, what would you tell 20 or 25 year ago Curt about the journey and that would make a difference if you could boil it down to one big thing?
So the bumper sticker would be, success doesn't always have to be painful. That it usually is. Like there's usually some pain in there. So try not to inflict it, because typically what I found as a leader, if I was inflicting pain on people, it was out of my own fear and insecurity. So that leads to, so if the bumper sticker is pain doesn't have to, that success doesn't have to be painful, the bigger story is to worry about the right things. You said the journey, it should be about the journey. When I was younger, it was about a destination. It was always, I wanted this much money in the bank by this date, and I wanted to get to here. And it was always some point off in time. And when I started to figure it out, in my 40s is when I really started to kind of figure it out, saying, I'm actually supposed to be enjoying this today. I'm supposed to be enjoying this journey. I'm supposed to be extracting joy out of this every day, and that the result will happen. And that'll get here when it gets here. And what's retirement anyway? I retired for 10 weeks once. It was my wife would have she would have shot me. It was just not going to happen. I'm not built for it. So, imagine your life as it evolves and be realistic with yourself. There's Arthur Brooks wrote a book called From Strength to Strength. And he talks about how our skills start to deteriorate in like our 30s, where we're less innovative, we're less quick-witted, we're worse with names, things like that. And if we continue to try to do the things we've always done, we end up really disappointed and frustrated. But then
I've got the book. I'm reading it.
Nice. Yeah. But he talks about this. It's like your it's your fluid intelligence and then your fixed intelligence. But what does happen is as you get into your 40s and later, is you're more intuitive with people. Your vocabulary gets more expanded. You become a far better teacher and a coach and a mentor. And that if we can figure that out and jump from that first arc to the second arc, there's all kinds of success and happiness in that. Mm-hmm. And so maybe like for, folks around my age are thinking about what's next. Maybe it isn't what you were doing when you were 30. Maybe it's some iteration of that where you can be a teacher, you can be a coach, you can still be a leader, but your emphasis might be more on mentoring and coaching versus kind of, doing the trick I did when I was younger, which was just drag everyone to the finish line, kicking and screaming.
That's we use the EOS system, which we talk about a lot, and it's come up through a lot of these podcasts. And they talk about the genius with 1,000 helpers or something like that is kind of the model. And people have asked me, for years, the business languished in the $3 million range. And 2008, I had 3 customers go bankrupt in 90 days, and a bank call our loans, which I didn't even know was possible because I was too dumb to read all of the fine print of the line of credit. They were just telling me their problems, and they said, "Well, that's why we're here." I said, "Why is that?" I said, "Well, because we need to call your note." I said, "Your problem shouldn't be mine." So I got enough of my own. Anyhow, when you look at all of those things, ultimately it wasn't until I decided to bring in the right folks, let them do their thing. And it's a very uncomfortable transition.
Vulnerable. There's a vulnerability.
I was saying, why isn't this happening? And that's been done months ago. I'm like, why am I always the last to know? Our facilitator tells me that's how it's supposed to be. So right. that we set these goals, we agree on them, they go do them, and I just got to do the ones that I agreed to do. So that is a huge transition. I'm actually going to steal Susanna's copy of that book when she's done with it.
It's a good one.
Maybe I'll go buy my own. But that's a great piece of advice there, because that transition, while it may be really complicated, I think personally for me, I know I enjoy the hell out of getting the opportunity to sit and have those more meaningful conversations. And as Susanna will tell you, I mean, in our organization, they're allowed to go wherever they go and talk about whatever really is going on, because at the end of the day, it's everybody's still people, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's what it's about, So I think that, like, what you said sounds so simple, but it's really difficult especially for us fear-driven, like egomaniacs with inferiority complexes, right? Like that, when my fear gets the best of me, I just run hard and I just do, anything and everything for and with the people around me. And to get to a point in my life where I can step back and just trust that, their way might be better, trust but verify, don't get me wrong, but to not try to build leadership teams of 6 clones of Curt Allen, because the world barely needs this one anymore. We don't need six more of me.
No, I can relate to that. That's definitely, when I look around, I was going through something and I was looking at a direct quote, and it said that they said somebody was stiff, and I said, well, of course he's stiff. If he was like me, that would be problematic. He's got to be rigid and stiff and instill discipline into certain aspects of the business that I don't want to. So you got to find those people around you, and you got to find those people around you at home, at work, all of those pieces, because it's not a small feat to manage around, especially around somebody who's constantly thinking about what's next and thinking about creating, right? And I think when I look at a lot of the entrepreneurs, at least the ones that I know best personally, they're more of the cathedral builders than the maintainer type. And that's a often challenging personality to be close to. I like being close to them for hours at a time. Right. I don't know what it would be like to be married to one. You could probably ask my wife what that's like. Get a whole earful about it. So, or Susanna, who's just got to keep me focused sometimes for a day at a time. So that's a challenge. Curt, thank you very much for your time. How can people get in touch with you if they're looking for your services, Curt?
You find me at C. Allen at EagleTEQ. That's TEQ. So EagleTEQ.com. Check out our website there. And then, like I said, my primary project right now is Blue Wave Technology Group. So we're in the process of building what we hope will be the kind of McKesson or Accenture of IT advisories, kind of lifecycle management play. And so either of those places, Blue Wave Technology or EagleTEQ.
Good luck to you. Sounds like you still creating and still starting over again and again. So
it's the striver's curse, right? Is that what Arthur Brooks says? But
do you remember what I said when we started? Though, if I can just do things that interest me with people I like, the rest of it is easy. So.
Well, thank you so much, Curt. And thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you like this podcast, make sure you subscribe to it, like it, rate it, and leave a comment below if you are watching on YouTube. And be sure to join us for our next episode of The Working CEO, when we will meet the self-described telecom bum turned investor. Until next time, I'm Susanna Song.
I'm Mark Porter.
And this is The Working CEO. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of The Working CEO. Remember, whether your collar is blue or white, roll up your sleeves and let's get real. The Working CEO is made possible by Highwire Networks, a leading global provider of technical, professional, electrical, and managed cybersecurity services, serving businesses in more than 180 countries. To learn more, visit highwirenetworks.com.